Ethan Ward was never one to look for trouble, but trouble always seemed to find him. He was a strong man, taller than most, with scars on his arms and a look in his eyes that told people he had seen too much war for one lifetime. Now, he worked as a miner on Colony Sigma 7, a small mining settlement on the edge of human space. The colony was dry and dusty, built on a desert planet with 2 suns that burned the sky red every evening. Miners here worked hard for every piece of rare mineral they dug up. Most people kept to themselves. Everyone knew that out here, far from Earth, there were no real laws. Only strength and guts kept you alive. That evening, Ethan finished his shift and walked to the supply depot to collect his weekly rations. He stood in line quietly, looking at the people around him. He knew most of them by name. Hard workers, tough folks who had come here for money or to run away from old lives. When Ethan reached the counter, the old supply clerk looked nervous. "Sorry, Ethan," he said in a low voice. "Your ration crate is gone." Ethan frowned. "Gone? How?" "Some mercenaries came earlier," the clerk whispered. "They took extra supplies, said you wouldn't mind." Ethan's eyes narrowed. He didn't need food for himself only. He also helped 2 young miners whose families were on other worlds. He couldn't let bullies steal from him. "Where are they?" Ethan asked. The clerk pointed behind him, out towards the rusty metal shelters near the edge of the colony. Ethan didn't say another word. He turned and walked towards the shelters, the sand crunching under his boots. Near an old cargo container, Ethan saw 4 men laughing and drinking. They wore mismatched armor pieces and carried cheap blasters on their belts. One of them, a big man with a scar across his cheek, held Ethan's ration crate like a trophy. Ethan walked up and stopped a few feet away. He crossed his arms. "That's mine," Ethan said calmly. The men looked at him and laughed. The big man threw an empty drink can at Ethan's feet. "Too bad, old soldier," he said. "Finders keepers." Ethan looked at the man's friends. He could see they were not real. Fighters, just bullies with weapons. He stepped closer. "I'm not asking again," Ethan said. His voice was quiet but sharp like a knife. One of the mercenaries stood up. He drew his blaster and aimed it at Ethan. "You want it? Come take it!" Ethan didn't wait. He stepped forward fast, knocking the man's arm aside before he could shoot. His fist slammed into the man's face, sending him crashing into the sand. Before the others could react, Ethan was on them. He grabbed a metal pipe from the ground and swung it at the second man, hitting his leg. The man screamed and fell. The big man roared and charged. He pulled a knife, swinging wildly. Ethan ducked under the blade and punched him in the stomach, then elbowed him in the face. The big man fell back, bleeding from his nose. The last mercenary tried to run, but Ethan grabbed his collar and pulled him back, tossing him to the ground. The fight was quick but loud. People gathered at a distance, watching the lone miner beat. 4 armed men with only his hands and whatever he could find. When it was over, Ethan stood over the men, breathing hard. He picked up his ration crate, wiping blood from a cut on his cheek. He looked around at the small crowd. No one spoke. They just stared at him with a mix of fear and respect. But Ethan didn't know he had another pair of eyes watching him. Eyes not human, but bright green and calm. On top of a cargo tower nearby, hidden in the shadows, Lyra of the Scifi crouched silently. Her tall, slender figure was covered in a cloak of shifting colors. Her skin, a soft silver blue, glowed faintly in the dark. Her people were known across the galaxy for their honor and warrior pride. Lyra had come to this colony to observe humans, hoping to learn if they were strong enough to help her people in a coming conflict. She had watched many humans, miners, soldiers, smugglers, but none had impressed her. They used guns, tricks, and fear to win fights. None had shown the raw courage and strength her people respected. Until now. Lyra's eyes widened when she saw Ethan fight. He did not rely on fancy weapons or big armor. He used only his fists, his strength, and his will. He fought like a true warrior. and he won. When Ethan picked up his crate and started walking back towards his small shelter, Lyra followed silently from above. She moved like a ghost, jumping from roof to roof without a sound. She knew she had to speak to him. This human was different. Ethan reached his shelter, a small metal hut with a single light inside. He put the crate down and washed the cut on his cheek with water from a metal jug. He sat down on an old chair, rubbing his sore knuckles. Suddenly, he heard a soft sound behind him, like silk brushing metal. He turned quickly, ready to fight again. But what he saw made him freeze. A tall alien woman stood at his doorway. Her eyes glowed green in the dim light. Her cloak seemed to change colors like a living thing. She held no weapon, but her posture was that of a fighter, calm, ready. "Who are you?" Ethan asked, standing up slowly. Lyra stepped closer, studying him with interest. Her voice was smooth, but there was a strength behind it. "I am Lyra of the Scifi," she said. "I saw you fight." Ethan frowned. "And? You want to rob me too?" Lyra laughed softly, a sound like wind chimes in the desert wind. She shook her head. "No, human. I wish to know your name." "Ethan Ward." She repeated his name slowly, like tasting it. Then she tilted her head, looking at him with a strange smile. "I wish you were my husband," she said suddenly. Ethan blinked. He had fought bandits, survived wars, and faced death many times. But nothing had surprised him more than this strange alien woman standing in his shelter, telling him she wished he were her husband. "Excuse me?" Ethan said. Lyra just smiled wider, her eyes shining. "You fight with heart. You fight with honor. On my world, you would make a fine mate." Ethan sat back down, shaking his head with a small laugh. "Lady, I think you have the wrong man." But deep down, for the first time in years, Ethan felt something stir inside him. A feeling that maybe, just maybe, his life was about to change forever. Ethan Ward sat in his small shelter, staring at the strange alien woman who had just said she wished he were her husband. The light above flickered softly, making her silver-blue skin look like moonlight on water. Lyra stood calmly in front of him. She seemed completely comfortable in this dusty, broken place. Her bright green eyes watched him closely, studying his every move. Ethan rubbed the back of his neck. He did not know what to say. He had seen many strange things in his life: alien traders, old battlefields on far planets, even pirate attacks, but never an alien woman walking into his room and asking him to be her husband. "Is this some kind of joke?" Ethan asked, finally. Lyra tilted her head slightly, her long dark hair moving like silk. "No joke, Ethan Ward. I saw your strength. I saw your courage. Among my people, these are the greatest qualities in a mate." Ethan leaned back in his chair and laughed, though there was no humor in his voice. "Lady, I don't know what you think you saw, but I'm just a miner now. I'm not some hero." Lyra stepped closer. She moved with the grace of a hunter, but her eyes were kind. She crouched down in front of him so they were eye to eye. "You fought 4 armed men with nothing but your hands," she said softly. "You did not back down. You did not run. You protected what was yours. That is the sign of a true warrior." Ethan looked away, shaking his head. "I didn't do it to prove anything. I did it because they were thieves." "And that," Lyra said, touching her chest, "is why you are worthy." Ethan stood up quickly, needing space. He walked to the small window and looked outside at the endless desert. The 2 suns had set now, and the sky was a deep purple full of stars. Somewhere out there was Earth, but Ethan had left it behind long ago. "Why me?" he asked without turning around. "You could find anyone better. Someone younger, stronger. A real fighter." Lyra stood too. She came to stand beside him, looking out at the stars. The Scifi are a proud people, she said. We are strong. But strength is not enough now. There is trouble in my home. There are those who wish for war. I came here to find humans who could help us. Many humans have technology. Many have money. But you... She looked at him with that same intense gaze. You have heart. Ethan laughed again, but this time softer. Heart doesn't stop bullets. It does more than that, Lyra said. It inspires others. My people follow those who show courage, not just those who hold power. Ethan turned to face her fully now. So you want me to fight for your people? Lyra smiled, showing small, sharp teeth. Not fight for us. Stand with us. There is a difference. Ethan crossed his arms. And what does marrying you have to do with it? Lyra seemed amused by the question. Among my people, a mate of a noble warrior becomes part of the family, a partner, an equal. If you stand beside me, you will have power to speak, to lead, to protect. Ethan blinked. So what? I marry you and suddenly I'm a prince? Lyra chuckled softly. Something like that. Ethan stepped back, rubbing his temples. His head hurt. This was too much for one night. First a fight, now an alien woman asking him to marry her and lead her people. It sounded like something out of an old space adventure story. Seeing his confusion, Lyra reached out and gently touched his arm. Her hand was cool, her touch light but steady. You do not have to decide now, she said. But I need you to trust me. Come with me. See my world. If you still wish to say no, I will bring you back. Ethan looked at her hand on his arm, then at her face. She looked serious, more serious than anyone he had met in years. There was no trick in her eyes, no hidden game. He sighed. Where is your world? Lyra pulled back her cloak and pressed a small device on her wrist. A hologram appeared in the air, a bright blue planet with swirling silver clouds and massive crystal mountains. It looked nothing like Earth. This is Zafara Prime. Lyra said proudly, my home, a world of warriors, artists, and thinkers. But now we stand on the edge of civil war. I must stop it. And I believe you can help me. Ethan stared at the spinning image. It was beautiful, a place that looked alive and ancient at the same time. He felt a spark inside him, a part of him that had been asleep since he left the military, since he buried old friends and old dreams. Why do you trust me? Ethan asked quietly. Lyra looked at him with those bright green eyes. Because I see a man who does not run from what is right. I see a man who fights even when it is not easy. I see a man who can stand beside me. Ethan didn't know what to say to that. No one had talked to him like this in years. No one had asked him to stand for something bigger than himself. After a long moment, he nodded slowly. All right, suppose I say yes. What happens now? Lyra's eyes shone. She stepped closer, and for a moment, Ethan thought she might hug him. Instead, she pressed her forehead lightly to his, a gesture that felt both alien and comforting. Then you come with me, she whispered. But first, you must prove yourself to my people. Ethan pulled back, raising an eyebrow. Prove myself? I thought beating up 4 mercenaries was enough. Lyra laughed, a warm musical sound that filled the small shelter. To me it is, but to my people? You must pass the trial of kinship, an ancient test. It will show them you are worthy to stand as my equal. Ethan groaned. More fighting? Lyra smiled playfully. Not just fighting. It will test your mind, your spirit, and your heart. Ethan ran a hand through his short hair. And if I fail? Lyra's smile faded, but her eyes stayed soft. Then I take you back here. No harm done. But I do not believe you will fail. Ethan looked at her for a long moment. He thought about his small shelter, the empty desert, the stolen rations, the tired life he had built here. Then he looked at her, a strange alien warrior with eyes like emerald fire and a smile that made him feel alive. "All right, Lyra," he said finally. "I'll come with you." Lyra's smile returned, brighter than ever. She held out her hand. Ethan took it. Her grip was strong, stronger than any human woman's. He felt something shift inside him. Maybe this was the start of something, worth fighting for again. Outside, the stars burned bright above the desert, and somewhere in the darkness, a new story was just beginning. Ethan Ward had never left Colony Sigma 7 since he arrived 5 years ago. He had come to this dry, lonely planet to disappear, to forget the past. But now, standing beside Lyra in the cold, desert night, he knew his quiet days were over. Lyra's small ship was hidden behind a rocky ridge outside the colony. It looked nothing like the rusty cargo ships Ethan had seen before. It was smooth, silver, and shaped like a long arrowhead. Strange blue lights glowed under its surface, humming softly in the darkness. Lyra pressed her wrist device. A ramp opened with a quiet hiss. Warm light spilled out, washing over Ethan's tired face. He looked back once at the colony. The metal huts, the dusty path, the cold stars above, then stepped inside. The ship's interior was simple but beautiful. Soft white lights lined the walls. The air smelled clean, like rain after a storm. Ethan ran his hand over a wall that shimmered like living metal. Everything felt alive here, advanced, yet warm. Lyra led him to a round chamber at the center of the ship. A single chair waited in the middle, surrounded by floating orbs of soft blue light. "Sit," Lyra said gently. "The journey is long. Rest while I prepare the jump." Ethan lowered himself into the chair. It was softer than it looked, molding to his shape. He let out a long breath. Lyra placed her hand on his shoulder, her touch steady. For the first time in years, he felt strangely safe. Lyra touched a panel, and the ship hummed louder. The walls turned dark, showing the stars outside. Then the stars stretched into long white lines. The ship jumped into deep space, silent as a whisper. Hours later, Ethan woke up to the soft voice of Lyra. "We are here." He sat up slowly. Outside the wide window, he saw a barren gray moon floating in black space. Small lights dotted its surface, landing beacons and old metal structures. "Where are we?" Ethan asked, rubbing sleep from his eyes. Lyra stood beside him, wearing armor now. Smooth plates of dark silver covered her chest, shoulders, and legs. Strange symbols glowed faintly along the edges. She looked like a statue come to life. "This is Trial Moon, far from prying eyes," she said. "My people come here when they wish to prove their strength and spirit. Here, you will face the trial of kinship." Ethan stood adjusting his old jacket. "And what exactly does this trial test?" Lyra gave him a small, proud smile. "It tests all that you are, your body, mind, and heart. You will face machines, puzzles, and your own fear. If you pass, the High Council will accept you as my prospective mate." Ethan looked out at the cold, gray rocks. He felt a chill in his bones, but it wasn't fear. It was something else. That old feeling he had tried to bury for so long. The thrill of facing the impossible. The ship landed on a flat platform under a steel dome. The inside of the dome was huge, like an old arena. Strange metal doors lined the walls. The floor was covered in dust and cracked stone. Bright lights shone down from above, humming like giant insects. Lyra led Ethan to the center. Waiting there was a round pedestal with a small, glowing symbol on top. Ethan could not read it, but he felt its importance. Lyra faced him and placed her hands on his shoulders. "Once you touch this, the trial begins. You cannot stop until it is done." Ethan nodded slowly. "What happens if I fail?" Lyra's eyes softened. You will not die, but you will return with me to Sigma 7. My people will see you as unworthy. They will not listen to your voice. Ethan smiled faintly. Well, no turning back now. Lyra stepped closer, her forehead brushing against his again, the same gesture she had given him that night. Fight with heart, Ethan Ward. She whispered, I believe in you. Ethan looked into her bright green eyes. He felt something warm inside him. A fire he thought was gone. He placed his hand on the pedestal. The room shifted. The lights flickered. Doors slammed shut around the edges of the dome. Ethan stepped back as the floor cracked open. From below, strange metal shapes rose, training droids, thin but strong with glowing blue eyes and blades for arms. Ethan rolled his shoulders, cracking his knuckles. All right then, he muttered to himself. Round 1. The first droid lunged. Ethan dodged sideways, grabbing a metal pole that had fallen from the ceiling. He swung it like a staff, blocking the droid's blade. Sparks flew. Another droid attacked from behind. Ethan spun, ducked, and kicked its legs out from under it. He moved like he did back on the colony. No weapons, only his mind and the ground beneath him. More droids came, faster, smarter. Ethan could feel sweat on his back. His muscles screamed, but he refused to slow down. He remembered his old training. Every move was sharp, every step planned. He struck, dodged, countered, turning metal and dust into his battlefield. One droid pinned him down, its blade an inch from his throat. Ethan roared, pushing with all his strength, rolling to the side and slamming the droid's head into the floor until it sparked dead. He stood, panting. The last droid fell in pieces at his feet. He wiped blood from a cut on his forehead. He could hear his heart pounding. But the test was not over. A section of the wall slid open, revealing a dark tunnel. A soft light glowed inside. Ethan limped forward, stepping inside without fear. Inside, the tunnel led him to a round chamber with walls covered in symbols. In the middle floated a large black cube. Strange energy lines pulsed across its surface. Ethan circled the cube slowly. There were no buttons, no switches, only symbols that shifted and moved when he got closer. A voice echoed from hidden speakers, calm but cold. Second trial. The trial of mind. Solve the pattern. Fail, and the doors remain closed forever. Ethan cursed under his breath. Puzzles. Great. He stared at the moving symbols. He remembered Lyra's words. It will test your mind. He breathed slowly, watching the patterns shift like rivers. He looked for breaks, repeated marks, hidden clues. Minutes passed, maybe hours. His head hurt. His eyes burned. He touched the cube, tracing the lines with his fingers. Slowly, the symbols changed color under his touch. He pushed sections, turned hidden panels. When he made mistakes, the cube flashed red and shocked his hands. But he did not stop. He thought about Lyra, about the colony, about the part of him that refused to quit. He focused that stubbornness into his fingers, matching patterns, finding the hidden locks. Suddenly, the cube glowed bright, blue. It split open with a soft hiss. A hidden door in the wall opened ahead. Ethan let out a breath he did not know he was holding. He stepped into the final chamber. It was empty. Only a single mirror stood in the middle. Ethan stared at it. He saw himself, tired, dirty, bleeding. He saw his scars, his old wounds. For a moment, he saw the ghosts of old battles in his eyes. Then he saw Lyra, not in the mirror, but in his mind. Her strength, her faith in him. A soft voice spoke in the chamber. The final trial, the trial of heart. Know yourself, face your fear, accept what you are. Ethan looked at his reflection. He saw the soldier, the broken man, the drifter who ran to a dead planet to forget. But he also saw something more. The man who stood up when others backed down, the man who would fight for strangers if they needed him. He placed his hand on the cold glass. His reflection did the same. The mirror shimmered and melted away, like water. Light filled the room. Ethan stepped forward, his heart calm and ready. The doors opened. Lyra stood waiting, wearing a proud smile. Ethan walked out, bruised, tired, but standing tall. "You did it," Lyra said softly. Ethan nodded. "I'm not done yet." Lyra laughed. "No, you are not." Together they turned towards the waiting ship, ready to fly home to a world that needed them both. The silver ship broke through the clouds like a silent arrow. Ethan Ward stood by the wide window, eyes wide as Zifara Prime spread out before him like a dream. He saw vast green forests glowing with soft blue lights, giant crystal mountains, reached into the clouds like shining spires. Rivers like silver ribbons cut through deep valleys. In the distance, tall cities rose from the wild land, shaped like crystal towers touched by starlight. Ethan had seen many planets during his years, as a soldier, but none like this. Zifara Prime felt alive, strong yet beautiful, wild yet peaceful. Lyra stood beside him, wearing her warrior armor and a flowing cloak with her clan's symbols. She looked proud but calm. Her eyes glowed brighter as they flew over her home. "This is where you grew up?" Ethan asked softly. Lyra nodded. "My family has guarded these lands for centuries. Our people believe the land is our blood and the crystals are our bones. We must keep them safe." Ethan nodded. He felt the weight of what was coming. He had passed the trial of kinship, but he knew this was only the beginning. He was just a human miner, an ex-soldier from a broken colony, now about to meet an alien council of warriors and nobles who might not want him here. The ship landed on a large landing pad made of shining white stone. Dozens of Zifari warriors stood waiting in perfect rows. They wore armor like Lyra's, but in many colors, each marked with clan symbols and glowing lines. They looked strong, silent, and ready for anything. Lyra stepped forward first. Ethan followed, feeling small under their watchful eyes. His old boots tapped against the smooth stone. He held his head high, even as whispers passed through the rows of warriors. At the front stood an older Zifari man, tall and broad-shouldered, with silver hair tied back and armor decorated with bright blue crystal shards. His eyes were the same green as Lyra's, sharp and bright. "Father," Lyra said, bowing her head slightly, "this is Ethan Ward. He has passed the trial." The old warrior's eyes moved to Ethan. They seemed to weigh him, testing his worth with a single look. Ethan stayed still. He did not bow. He just gave a small nod. "So this is the human who fights bare-handed," the old man said in a deep voice. "I am High Chieftain Varun, leader of the Council of Clans." "Ethan Ward," Ethan said simply. Varun stepped closer. He was taller than Ethan by a head. He looked into Ethan's eyes as if searching for weakness. "You faced our machines, our puzzles, and your own mind. But the trial is only a door, human. You must now earn the Council's trust." Ethan did not flinch. "I didn't come to lie. I came because your daughter asked. I stand with her. Nothing more." A few warriors nearby looked at each other. They were not used to humans speaking so directly to their high chieftain, but Varun's eyes showed a small smile, a hidden respect. "Good," Varun said. "Come. There is much to discuss." They walked through a crystal city that felt like walking through a living gem. Streets of smooth white stone wound between tall crystal towers. Bridges of glass connected buildings high in the sky. Lights danced inside the walls, changing colors like northern lights on Earth. People stopped to stare at Ethan. Children peeked from behind their parents. Some whispered to each other. Ethan felt the weight of every stare but kept walking. Lyra walked close beside him, her head high. She leaned toward him and said softly, "They are curious. They have never seen a human stand beside a warrior noble like this." "They think I'm not worthy?" Ethan asked. Lyra smiled slightly. "Some do, but they did not see you fight. They did not see you stand alone against the trial." Ethan looked at her. "And if they never accept me?" Lyra's eyes shone. "Then I will stand beside you anyway." The council chamber was inside the tallest crystal tower. Its walls were clear like ice but strong as stone. Inside, the room was round, with seats circling a glowing floor made of pure blue crystal. Ethan stood in the center with Lyra at his side. Around him sat the council, 12 elders, each marked with their clan's symbols. Varun sat at the highest seat, watching quietly. An elder with red crystal lines on her armor spoke first. Her voice was cold and sharp. "This human has no clan, no bloodline. He is not Scifi. Why should we accept him?" Lyra spoke before Ethan could answer. "He has spirit. He fights with honor. He passed the trial." Another elder, older and thin, leaned forward. "A trial does not prove loyalty. How do we know he will not betray us? Humans sell their strength for money." Ethan felt anger rise in his chest, but he held it down. He stepped forward and spoke calmly. "You're right. Humans can be greedy. Some fight for coins, but not all. I came here because your daughter believed in me. She gave me a reason to stand for something better." Silence filled the room. The elders watched him like hawks. Ethan took a breath and went on. "You want my loyalty? I don't have fancy words. I can't promise you gold or secrets. But if you stand with me, I stand with you. I protect what is mine. That's who I am." Varun's eyes stayed on Ethan, sharp but thoughtful. "And what will you do if your enemies come with guns and ships?" Ethan's mouth curved into a small smile. "Then I fight them. Barehanded if I must." A few elders chuckled softly at his words. Even the cold elder with red lines seemed amused for a moment. The council broke into quiet discussion. Lyra squeezed Ethan's hand gently. Her touch made him feel steady, like a rock in a river. Minutes later, Varun raised his hand. The elders fell silent. "Very well," Varun said. "Ethan Ward, you will be given temporary status as prospective mate. You may walk our lands, speak with our people, but know this: trust is earned, not given." Ethan nodded once. "I understand." Varun leaned closer, his voice low but strong. "Be careful. Not all wish for peace. Some would see you fail to keep old powers safe." Ethan looked him straight, in the eyes. "Let them come." That night, Lyra brought Ethan to her family's high home, a palace of shining stone built on the side of a crystal cliff. The halls were warm, filled with soft lights and carvings of old battles. They sat in her private chamber, drinking a warm herbal drink that tasted like sweet mint and fire. Outside the window, the crystal towers glowed under the twin moons. "You did well today," Lyra said softly. "Many elders respect you now." Ethan shook his head. "They don't trust me yet." Lyra looked at him with her calm, proud eyes. "They will. You showed them who you are." Ethan stared at the stars outside. He felt tired but alive. He thought of the colony he had left behind, the cold sand, the empty sky. Here, everything felt new, dangerous, and full of purpose. Lyra touched his hand, her fingers warm. "Rest, tonight. Tomorrow you will meet my people. Speak to them. Show them your spirit." Ethan squeezed her hand back gently. "And if they don't listen?" Lyra smiled. "Then we make them listen." Outside, under the moons of Zephyra Prime, shadows moved. In dark corners of the shining city, whispers of betrayal and hidden knives grew louder. Enemies watched. Plots were set. Ethan did not know it yet. But soon he would need all his courage, not just to win their trust, but to survive. Ethan Ward woke before dawn. He sat on the edge of a wide crystal bed in Lyra's chamber, staring out at the first light of Zephara Prime's twin suns. The city below glowed with soft blue lights that slowly faded as the daylight touched the tall towers. His bruises from the trial still ached. His hands were cut and bandaged, but inside he felt strong, stronger than he had in years. Lyra stepped out from her private training space. She wore her dark silver armor again, her cloak flowing behind her. She looked like a queen and a warrior at the same time. "You did not sleep," Lyra said as she came closer. Ethan smiled a little. "Too much on my mind," Lyra touched his shoulder gently. "Today is important. The clans will gather, my father will speak, and you must stand by my side." Ethan stood up and pulled on a fresh shirt. "I'll be ready." Lyra held out a small piece of metal shaped like a thin band. Strange symbols glowed on it. "What's this?" Ethan asked. "A mark of trust," Lyra said. "Wear it on your arm. It shows you are my prospective mate. No one can challenge you openly while you wear it." Ethan slipped the band around his upper arm. It felt warm, like it held a small flame inside. He looked at Lyra's eyes and saw how proud she was. Somehow that mattered more than any mark. Later that morning they walked through the wide stone halls of the high palace. Warriors and nobles stepped aside as Lyra and Ethan passed. Some bowed their heads. Others watched in silence, their eyes sharp and cold. They entered the great hall, a massive round chamber carved deep inside the cliff. Hundreds of Zephari were gathered there, warriors in armor, elders in long robes, young fighters standing at the edges. Above them all, tall crystal pillars glowed with blue light. High Chieftain Varun stood on a raised platform, his armor shining bright with blue crystal lines. He lifted his hand, and the hall fell silent. "People of Zephara," Varun's voice boomed across the chamber. "We gather to speak of our future. There are whispers of war. There are those who wish to divide us, clan against clan, family against family." A murmur ran through the crowd. Ethan stood beside Lyra at the edge of the platform, watching the sea of faces. He could see doubt, fear, and something darker in a few eyes. Varun continued, "My daughter has brought a stranger among us, a human, one who fought the trial with his bare hands, who faced his own fears and did not break." All eyes turned to Ethan. He felt the weight of their stare, but stood tall. "This human stands not as our master," Varun said, voice steady, "but as our equal. As Lyra's chosen mate, he will speak for peace." Some people nodded, others whispered. A few turned their heads away, unimpressed. Lyra stepped forward. Her voice was calm but strong. "I trust him. His heart is true. But there are those who wish to silence us. They move in shadows. They plan violence to break our unity." The words stirred the crowd. Ethan watched as some warriors touched their weapons, eyes darting around the hall. He knew that look, the feeling before a fight. Suddenly, a loud bang echoed through the chamber. The huge crystal doors burst open. Dozens of armed warriors in dark armor stormed in, blasters raised. At their front was a tall Zephari with red crystal symbols on his armor. Rhaegor, leader of a rival clan. Rhaegor's voice cut through the hall like a knife. "These talks are lies. The High Chieftain grows weak. He brings aliens into our halls while our enemies wait at our borders. We will not stand by and bow to outsiders." His warriors spread out, pushing back the crowd. Blasters hummed with deadly blue light. Ethan's eyes narrowed. He stepped closer to Lyra. She pulled her blade from her side, a long crystal-edged sword that shimmered in the hall's blue light. "Stay close," she whispered. Rhaegar pointed at Ethan, his face twisted with hate. This human is nothing. He should not stand among us. Today, we take back our honor. He raised his hand. His warriors aimed at the platform. For a heartbeat, the whole hall froze. Then chaos exploded. Blaster fire cracked through the great hall. Sparks flew from the crystal pillars. Warriors yelled, blades clashed, energy shields hummed to life. Ethan grabbed a fallen spear from the ground. He ducked behind a broken pillar as shots flew past. He could see Varun fighting near the front, moving like an old lion. Powerful, precise, deadly. Lyra fought beside him. She moved like a storm, blade spinning, blocking blaster fire, striking with perfect grace. Rhaegar's men pushed forward, trying to reach the High Chieftain. Ethan saw 3 attackers rushing toward Varun's blind side. Without thinking, Ethan charged. He swung the spear like a staff, knocking one attacker's blaster aside. He slammed the butt of the spear into another's gut, then flipped the weapon and struck the third across the head. The attackers fell, weapons clattering on the stone floor. Ethan dropped the spear and picked up a blaster. He fired at the feet of more enemies, forcing them back toward the pillars. He moved without fear, ducking, rolling, striking with his fists when he had no shot. Through the smoke and shouting, Ethan caught sight of Rhaegar. The traitor leader was fighting his way toward Varun, blade drawn. Lyra yelled, "Ethan, with me!" Together they charged. Ethan blocked one of Rhaegar's guards with his blaster, swinging it like a club. Lyra clashed with Rhaegar's blade. Sparks flew as crystal met crystal. Rhaegar snarled, "You shame us, Lyra! You choose an outsider over your own blood!" Lyra pushed him back with a quick strike. "I choose honor!" she shouted. Ethan tackled another guard, taking a punch to his jaw but staying on his feet. He swung hard, knocking the guard down. Lyra and Rhaegar's blades locked. Rhaegar pushed forward, but Lyra twisted aside and slammed her elbow into his face. He stumbled back, right into Ethan's path. Ethan didn't wait. He grabbed Rhaegar by the armor, twisted him around, and slammed his fist into Rhaegar's stomach. The traitor gasped. Ethan struck again, once, twice, bare fists cracking against armored plates until Rhaegar collapsed at his feet. The hall fell silent. The fighting stopped as Rhaegar's guards dropped their weapons, seeing their leader beaten by a human with bloody knuckles and fire in his eyes. Varun stepped forward. He looked at Ethan, breathing hard, bruised, but standing tall beside Lyra. "You have protected this council, Ethan Ward," Varun said loudly. "You have fought for peace, not for power, not for gold, but for honor." He turned to the watching warriors. "Let all here remember this day. Let them remember that strength is not in blood alone. It is in the spirit that stands for what is right." Slowly, warriors across the hall lowered their weapons. Some dropped to one knee, others slammed their fists over their chests in respect. Lyra turned to Ethan. Her eyes shone with pride. "You did not need a blade," she whispered. "Your heart is your strongest weapon." Ethan looked at her and smiled, even through the pain in his hands. "Told you, barehanded if I must." Outside, the broken doors of the great hall, the first true light of dawn touched Zifra Prime, a new day rising for a people ready to stand together. Sunlight poured through the broken crystal doors of the great hall. Its warm glow touched the wounded floor, the fallen weapons, and the Zifari warriors kneeling in respect. The fighting was over, but a new struggle was about to begin. Ethan. Ward stood at the center, fists bruised, face marked by cuts and sweat. Beside him, Lyra's silver-blue skin glowed softly under the morning light. Her armor was scratched and dented, but she stood tall, proud of the human who had fought like one of her own. High Chieftain Varun stepped down from the raised platform. His old eyes studied Ethan with a respect no words could measure. "You have done more than pass our tests," Varun said, his deep voice echoing through the silent hall. "You have shown us what courage looks like, not with a blade, but with heart. Ethan tried to catch his breath. His knuckles hurt with every heartbeat. He felt every bruise from the fight, but a small smile curved on his tired face. "I didn't plan on starting a war council fight today," he said, voice low but clear. Varun almost laughed. "Yet you finished it with your fists alone." He turned to the gathered warriors and elders. "Let it be known, Ethan Ward is no longer only a prospective mate. From this day he is bloodbound to Clan Zifari. He is one of us." The warriors slammed their fists over their chests in a sign of respect. Even the ones who had doubted him lowered their heads. Ethan felt the weight of the moment settle on his shoulders like a warm cloak. He had come here as a stranger. Now he stood as part of something bigger than himself. Later that day, Lyra led Ethan through the shining city. The air was fresh after the storm of battle. Crystals on the towers glowed brighter than ever, as if the city itself was celebrating. People came out to see them. Young Zifari children ran beside Ethan, giggling and pointing at his bandaged fists. Traders bowed their heads as Lyra passed. Old warriors nodded with quiet respect. Ethan felt their eyes on him, but this time he did not feel like an outsider. He felt like he belonged, here among crystal towers, strange languages, and a people who valued spirit more than skin. Lyra stopped at a wide balcony high above the city. From here, Ethan could see the forests beyond, the rivers shining like silver threads, and the crystal mountains guarding the land. She turned to face him. Her bright green eyes glowed in the sunlight. "You have changed everything, Ethan Ward." Ethan leaned against the railing, looking at the world he had promised to protect. "You're the one who dragged me from my broken shelter," he said. "You saw something in me that I didn't." Lyra stepped closer, her hand brushing his cheek where a bruise was forming. "I saw truth, strength that doesn't come from weapons, but from the heart." Ethan laughed softly. "I still can't believe you looked at me fighting four drunk mercenaries and thought, he should be my husband." Lyra laughed too, a sound like soft wind through chimes. "I did not choose wrongly, did I?" Ethan shook his head. "No, you didn't." By sunset, the city gathered in the main plaza for a final ceremony. Torches burned along stone steps, and crystal lanterns floated like tiny stars above the crowd. At the front, Varun stood with Lyra and Ethan. Around them, thousands of Zifari waited to hear the words that would guide them forward. Varun raised his hands. The plaza fell silent. "Today we stand whole again," he said, voice deep and calm. "Traitors rose among us, but they were stopped by the courage of a daughter who loves her people, and by a human whose fists speak with the power of truth." He turned to Ethan. "Step forward." Ethan stepped up beside Lyra. The cold night breeze touched his face, but the warmth of thousands of eyes made him feel stronger than any sun. Varun took a small blade made of pure crystal. Its edge glowed softly. He raised Ethan's hand and made a small cut on his palm, then did the same to Lyra's hand. Lyra took Ethan's hand in hers, pressing their wounds together. A soft light glowed where their blood mixed. It was not pain Ethan felt, but a deep warmth, like a promise tying him to this place, to these people, and to her. Varun spoke to the crowd. "Blood-bound, warrior-bound, let none break this bond. Let none doubt this promise," the people shouted together, a sound like thunder rolling through the crystal towers. Ethan felt the echo in his bones. Lyra leaned close, her forehead touching his, as she had done the first night they met. "From now you stand with me, not behind, not before, beside me." Ethan nodded, his voice low. "Always." As the night grew darker, the celebration filled the city. Music rose from the plazas. Warriors danced in circles around crystal fires. Children sang old songs of heroes and peace. Traders gave out sweet drinks in carved crystal cups. Ethan and Lyra sat together on the palace steps, watching their people rejoice. The stars above Scifi Prime shone like silver diamonds. "You know," Ethan said, sipping the sweet drink, "I came here thinking I'd fight some robots, pass a test, then disappear again." Lyra smiled, resting her head lightly on his shoulder. "Instead, you fought for a people who needed you and found a home." Ethan chuckled. "And a wife." Lyra looked at him, eyes playful. "Not yet." Ethan raised an eyebrow. "Oh? What was that whole blood-mixing thing then?" Lyra laughed. "It is the first bond, the promise. Tomorrow, the real joining ceremony takes place, before the clans, under the first light." Ethan groaned playfully. "More elders staring." "At me?" Lyra nodded, grinning. "Many more." He laughed and kissed her forehead gently. "All right. One more ceremony. Then maybe we can rest." Lyra's eyes softened. "Rest. Maybe. But we still have a world to protect." Ethan looked at the city below, so alive, so bright in the darkness. He felt no fear, no regret, only purpose. He wrapped an arm around Lyra's shoulders. "Whatever comes, we face it together." She nodded, her eyes fixed on the stars. Together. As the twin moons rose over Scifi Prime, the people sang songs of hope and courage. And in that shining city of crystal and stone, one human, once broken and forgotten, sat beside an alien warrior who had seen his heart. Together they watched a new dawn rise, not just for themselves, but for all who believed that true. Strength lives not in the blade or the gun, but in the courage to stand, barehanded for what is right.